viability of using industrial hemp as a biofuel in this region, particularly Virginia. So what is hemp? There's a lot of confusion with hemp and a lot of stigma that comes with it because it's associated with marijuana. Hemp has a virtually undetectable amount of THC in it, which is a psychoactive chemical that makes you high that's found in marijuana. So our client is Chase Milner. He's the Shenandoah Valley Regional Director of the Virginia Industrial Hemp Coalition. So at the beginning of the semester, we defined some goals of our project and what he was looking for us to find. The first one was just gain background knowledge on hemp and its ability to grow in this area. We also needed to determine the market for biofuels in general in the area to determine if maybe hemp can play into those markets. And
so this is a general overview of the timeline of events. As we were researching our project, Chase came and spoke to our entire class, and after that we actually had a Skype meeting with him, and that's how we were able to clarify the main points of this project. Following that up, we scheduled a meeting with Dr. Fike, who's also here today, and then lastly we visited an actual biofuel production facility. Our meeting with Dr. Fike was on November the 4th. Dr. Fike is actually a professor here at Virginia Tech in the Department of Crop and Soil Environmental Sciences. Upon leaving our meeting with Dr. Fike, we decided that the top 3 limitations for industrial hemp as a biofuel were that 1, it's currently not legal, which is an obvious limitation. 2, it's not very well known in the sense that there has not been a large amount of research completed on it. And then lastly, we haven't really been able to determine the market for industrial hemp as a result of it not being legal. And then the benefits that could come from industrial hemp is the diversity that it could bring to the land. And it's a biofuel option that is not a food versus fuel. So a lot of the other biomaterials are actually things that people can also eat, which leads to a little bit of competition. And essentially the main point we walked away with was that biofuels aren't the most lucrative use for industrial hemp.
Great. On November 30th, we made a visit to Thad Montgomery's farm. Thad Montgomery is a dairy farmer in Wirtz, Virginia. And essentially, he's trying to make his entire operation sustainable and self-sustaining and independent. So what that means is he's trying to grow his own food, grow his own fuel, and also make a living. What he does is he grows 250 acres of cropland. His 3 main crops are corn, soy, and barley. And he uses all of those to feed his cows. But what he does with the soy is he uses a press to create feed for his cows, which also creates an oil byproduct. Here you can see this is where the soy loads up into his facility. It goes through this press and then actually also through a second press. That press creates soy feed and also creates oil, which he converts into biodiesel using this refinement facility right here. That's pretty much it for that. Like I said, he's trying to be completely self-sustaining, and this process is going to end up saving him $8,000 a year.
So through our research, we essentially found that there are 2 commercially prevalent sources of biofuels derived from hemp. The first would be solid biofuels. Essentially what they do is they take the hemp stalks and they compress them into briquettes, and then these briquettes are burned in normally in CHP plants. They're combined heat and power plants. Essentially they work like a normal water heating. You boil water and it drives the turbine to make power, but the difference between these plants and normal plants is that they use the heat from the heating the water as also to heat the facility that's generating the power. So you essentially are getting double duty from the fuel. And unfortunately, these plants aren't really prevalent in the United States. A few of the big power generation companies like Dominion, AEP have things like this. They don't really use hemp, they use wood. But the market here in the United States is very minimal for that. On the upside, if there were to be a market, the solid biofuels have a higher energy conversion rate than liquid biofuels, essentially because there is no secondary conversion from the crop to the fuel and then using the fuel. The other main biofuel source is biodiesel. Essentially, it's the same process that Thad had going on at his farm. You take the seeds, you grind the oil out of them, and then you chemically convert that oil into biodiesel. Now, this biodiesel that you make from the hemp seeds is chemically equivalent to normal petroleum diesel. It burns in the same way in the engine, but the issue is that normally they have to mix it with petroleum biodiesel because the gel point of biodiesel is lower than petroleum diesel, so you have to mix it so you can use the fuel at the same temperatures that you would normally.
So obviously in any investment, it's important to look at the economic feasibility behind it. And so as a result, when we were comparing the different biofuel alternatives, we had to look at the production you can get per acre if you are able to grow industrial hemp. So the table to the left you can see is actually in kilograms of biodiesel produced per hectare per year. So the conversion for that is roughly 33.6 gallons of biodiesel produced per acre of industrial hemp.
All right, we also need to understand and research the current biofuel market in Virginia in order to understand how hemp biofuels could play into this market. First, one thing that we found out is that Virginia doesn't actually have much of a biofuel industry. It's small and it's young. First of all, Virginia exports all of its wood pellets to Europe, so there is no biofuel industry there. And the rest of the industry, like I said, is very young. There are only 5 biodiesel refineries in Virginia, and that's large scale, not talking about small scale like what Thad had. And there's only 1 ethanol refinery in Virginia. The oldest biodiesel refinery was founded in 2003, and the ethanol refinery that I'm referring to was only founded in 2014. So they're still young, their technologies are still developing, and the market still needs to grow. The good thing about biofuels in Virginia, though, is that liquid biofuels will work within our existing infrastructure. Just like in Thad's operation, he could use all the biodiesel that he produced to run his tractors and equipment. But a downside currently is that petroleum products actually cost less than biodiesel products. And also they're a little bit more convenient because they're more available.
So, in our conclusions, we first realized that we have to determine how hemp can be incorporated into Virginia agriculture, particularly the crop rotation, because if we can't incorporate it into the crop rotation, farmers aren't going to want to grow it. We also, from seeing Thad's operation, we realized that it's only really economically feasible to use hemp as a biofuel currently if you're going to use the other part of the plant. So he was using the meal to feed his cows as well as the fuel. And that really leads into what the other group is going to be talking about using alternative products, the fibers, and all of that. We also realized that right now it's not viable as a mass market, but it's more in small businesses. It can be incorporated to make them self-sustaining.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Ed, well, I was just wondering about what you found out about the impact on the environment concerning, the currently used fossil fuels extracting oil versus growing a plant. and also the residential commercial heating with solid fuels as opposed to natural gas and oil. What type of impact does hemp and using hemp fuels have that is better than burning oil, burning coal?
To answer your first question, I would just say that since hemp is grown locally, the transportation costs to get it to Virginia and to the United States would be significantly lower.
Also, if you were to look at it from like a holistic point of view, hemp is going to be carbon neutral, so it's going to be bringing in carbon as it's growing. So like through the entire life cycle of the product, from start to finish, it's more environmentally conscientious in regards to like the growing of it, the refining of it, and then transportation, just the same from saying. Also, it has a lower sulfur content than most of the other biofuels, which means that when it's burned, it actually is not producing as much greenhouse gas emissions. So if you're looking at it from an environmental standpoint, like hemp is obviously superior, but unfortunately the economic constraint on it and the social integration because it's illegal. Yes.
Go ahead. So is the primary source or form of biofuels as liquid as opposed to like a solid form? Because if you were to, the main way that you guys talked about extracting the like the capabilities of using it as a biofuel was pressing the seeds, but using, obviously people eat the seeds as something as like it's a product in and of itself, so leaving the hemp seed as a for something the animals to eat and having the fibers themselves as the source of the fuel, is that something that would be competitive or?
Economics wise, not really, because the infrastructure right now is not really to be able to consume solid hemp biofuel. Most people don't have like a wood stove, like a combustion chamber in their house to heat their homes. Most people have like a air conditioning unit or heating unit in their house or in an apartment. So right now, the infrastructure really isn't there for that to be a competitive option. The option for using the seeds for biodiesel and then also using the stalks for solid biofuels would help promote the economics, but currently you can't just go one or the other.
I'd like to mention that is absolutely a possibility though, to use it in a home furnace.
One last question, then we got to move on. We got two of those to squeeze in.
How long would it take for the United States to grow enough hemp to support industrial use if it were to be legal, like in a perfect setting? Because if they were to, make it legal and try to incorporate all this, how long would it take before we could grow our own crop to support it?
Really, I think that's a question that you could ask Chase on when private farmers will be able to grow it themselves, and that's when they'll be able to produce it and use it.
Yeah.
Hemp also has a really short, forgive my vocabulary, growing season, so it's really
Cycle.
Growing cycle. So
Yeah.
it's a fast crop to produce. So once it is legalized, I don't think it wouldn't be long leeway between the two.
Another thing worth noting is that I don't think that hemp is going to be, the sole resolution to the problem of energy. It's just going to be one added benefit that we're going to have to incorporate with a lot of other things.
Good job.